Which Side Podcast is a proud member of the Which Side Media Collective.
This week's episode is brought to us by you, by using our Amazon Associates link.
It's pretty simple how it works. If you're already planning on buying something from Amazon, and let's face it, most of you are, just go to our website, whichsidepodcast.com, click through our Amazon link, and we get a kickback of what you buy. So if you're already planning on doing it, it just loses Amazon money. They give us money, doesn't cost you anything, we get money, it's a win-win. So, if you're planning it, just do it. If you buy from Amazon a lot, or if you have like Amazon Prime, just save that link in your favorites, and every time you go to Amazon, click through that link, we get money. It's pretty fucking simple, and you're rad for doing it.
So thank you in advance.
And if you're just looking for something to buy on Amazon because you want to support the show, I recommend getting the Dandy's vegan marshmallows, because it's that time of year to go camping, and who the fuck doesn't want marshmallows when you're camping?
Yeah, roasted marshmallows, they're the best for that.
Oh my god.
They are great for s'mores. So if you don't have them in your area, you can pick them up on Amazon. Otherwise, just go get them locally.
This is what I like to do with them. You roast them, peel off the outer layer of the roast and eat that, roast it again. If you're careful, you can get like 4 layers off each one as it slowly gets bigger when you roast it. So delicious.
That is delicious.
Here's another thing you might want to try. Instead of making s'mores with just chocolate, make s'mores with a Justin's peanut butter cup.
That sounds delicious.
It is delicious. This is episode 136.
Yeah, this week we have Myq Kaplan on, a famous comedian.
I love Myq Kaplan. I listen to his podcast, hang out with me all the time, and check out his special on Netflix, Small, Dork and Handsome. What news and events do we have going on this week?
Well, not this week, but the week after in Utah, there is a Lagoon protest. Lagoon's an amusement park here that has for a long time been not only a animal trader, but also had a weird fucking zoo that...
It's like the second largest zoo in the state of Utah, I think. Yeah.
And it's actually getting a lot of attention lately. It's always been an issue for animal rights activists here, but it's starting to get a little bit more national coverage. And so there's going to be a big protest there. And if you can't make that, hold a solidarity one.
Yeah, there's also a petition going around. We'll have a link to all that on our show notes, so check that out. Do some solidarity actions, Every zoo needs a good protest, so why not, do it in solidarity with the activists here in Utah.
This week's episode shout-out is brought to you by no one, because we don't have one. If you'd like to shout out anything on our podcast, just go to whichsidepodcast.com. Click on the donate link under shout-outs. Give us a shout-out.
Whichsidepodcast.com.
Whichsidepodcast.com.
That's at whichsidepodcast.com.
W-I. Just kidding. W-I. I can't even fucking spell it.
W-I.
Put me on the spot. Spelling bee.
This week's Slingshot is not that old of a one, and I hope that everyone remembers this, and if you don't, go look it up. But on the 15th of June, 2011, Greece held a general strike with massive protests in Athens. I like their flag.
Yeah, I like it's a little different.
Yeah, I like it.
Not my favorite.
Not your favorite. What's your favorite flag?
Just the typical diagonal.
You like the diagonal? I like this. I almost like the Greece flag better. Yeah.
I mean,
maybe it's because it's just different in novelty.
I don't dislike it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And not like it fucking matters.
It's true. It doesn't matter at all.
But it is cool.
Yep. I sincerely hope you guys enjoy this episode.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side? Which side are you on? 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 Which side are you on?
What hotel you at?
It's called the Novotel in Montreal.
How is Montreal? I've never actually been to Montreal.
I like it.
Yeah?
Yes. I mean, there's probably a lot more than I could say about it. But so I don't know how much detail you want, but there's good comedy.
Yeah.
Is it pretty vegan friendly?
Yeah, there's definitely within like walking distance of my hotel, like within a 10-minute walk, there's like 3 or 4 places that are great. And then farther away, even more places.
Sweet.
You say there's places that are great, but is there any places that are kind of just shitty?
Oh, probably. Actually, one of the places I haven't been to, and somebody told me it was just fine. So I just said it's great that there are places, but I've been to a couple places that are great, and yeah, I'm sure there's bad stuff. But I like to focus on the positives.
Yeah, I can see that. But so with how much travel you're doing, do you ever like go to a place and people hype up like, oh, you gotta try this restaurant, it's the best here, and it's just absolutely horrible?
I guess that probably happens, like, because, living in New York City, there's so much vegan food, and so the quality of some is way better. And then if you have only a town with like, they're like, you got to go to here if you're vegan, but it's, if it's the only place in town, it doesn't have to be as good because it's not competing with tons of places. But also, there are places that have really great stuff.
Sorry, my mind went blank for a little bit.
No problem. Is this the podcast, or have we started?
Sure.
Yeah.
We never really have a start, I guess.
If you want to have an official start, we can do that, or if it's your thing.
Nah, I'm good.
Okay, well, here we are.
It has started.
I guess it's official now. It has started.
All right. I guess I initially was sort of being like not withholding of information, but because we started this as like a test call to make sure it would work, I was like, well, I don't want to give any, juicy details about, where I am, what I've been doing. Like, I can give you like the bare bones minimum, obviously, no bones as a vegan. All the bones are made of tofu. But then when like the questions started getting more, like looking for more and more actual information and insight, I was like, oh, I guess maybe is this like, are we gonna? So I just want to give you a little assessment of why, if I seemed cagey, that's what it was. And now I'm a little more, no cages, free range.
Free, yeah.
Well, and this is pretty much how we do it anyways. We don't really have anything ever planned. It's kind of just whatever the fuck happens.
I understand. But I just wanted to let you know that if I knew we had started, I would have answered more forthcomingly and faithfully. Let's start again. Let's start now. Like, ask me where I am and what's good about it.
Where are you and what's horrible about it?
Oh, no. I am in Montreal, and the place I ate today was called Crudescence, and it's all raw, and it's like real nice. I like it a lot. And another place I ate is Burritoville, which is an all vegetarian place. And like the 2 times that I ate there, I got quesadillas, and then the first time for the quesadilla cheese replacement, they were like, would you like sweet potato instead, or caramelized onion? And they were like, sweet potato would probably fill it more. And so I accepted, and that was real good. And then the next time they were like, would you like guacamole to replace it? I'm like, yes, of course I would. But the night before, they'd been out of guacamole. So it was a sort of a beneficial thing no matter what. So to answer what's horrible, nothing yet.
A place like Burritoville just sounds awesome.
Oh, yeah. A whole city of burritos?
Right?
A veritable village of them.
Can't go wrong with burrito. I just had a burrito. Burritos are great.
Do you also feel the same way about wraps?
Because
they're similar.
I'm impartial to wraps. I'll eat them, but I'm not obsessed with them.
Is it about the function, like, or the content? Like, do you not like that a wrap can, like, things can fall out the end? The structure, like, or is it that burritos usually have, like, a certain type of food in them? Even though you could, of course, have, like, a Thai burrito, but more often you're going to have more, like, Mexican burritos.
It's probably content. Also, I don't like when I think of a wrap, I also think of, like, lettuce on the outside, and why would I eat that?
Oh, you mean like a wrap made of lettuce, like a lettuce wrap?
Yeah, lettuce wrap. Or are you talking more of a...
No, more. I was thinking more of a tortilla thing. Oh, yeah, I get why you would be less pro lettuce wrap, but I mean, I'm also fine. I've eaten many a lettuce or a collard green wrap, or I don't even know what the thing I ate today was wrapped in. Something.
I can never really do the raw food. I always feel like I just need it cooked. I don't know why. I feel like I'm too hippie for me to eat raw food for some reason.
I will say this restaurant in particular, like, had on the menu some items that had like a little note next to them that some of the food items had been cooked like a little bit. So they're willing to meet you, at least 5% of the way there.
I think like the use of dates and nuts is overdone in a lot of raw food.
Also raw food, like eating just like, carrots with hummus can be raw food,
Yeah.
And that's good. Like nobody's like sticking a carrot in hummus and being like, I wish this carrot was cooked,
That's
so
true.
there are examples of raw food, like, but of course I'm on the page that you are on with, I don't only want to eat food that's raw. I also enjoy a warm food.
I've noticed that there's like this trend of people calling things like raw whole food when it's actually just cooked and then they serve it cold.
Interesting. You should let people know about that.
I have not heard of that trend.
Yeah, I think it's just like people being misinformed. It's like, well, it's vegan and it's cold, so that makes it raw, right? Not quite.
Yeah, if you cool down something that was cooked, it's like, becoming re-virginized.
Or rebaptized even, yes.
Exactly. Oh yeah, it's a born again raw food.
Born again raw food.
Raw foodist.
Yeah.
Could be a religion.
So quick question. Is this podcast all about food? I didn't do my research.
No, not usually.
Okay. It's fine that it is, and if it is, I'm okay with everything that's happening. Just wanted to make sure, if I should buckle down for like, as much food talk as possible, or if it may at some point naturally, organically, free-rangely shift.
It will.
We can force a shift too. It doesn't have to be natural.
Force not required.
What's your favorite book?
Oh, I like the first one that jumped to mind is Ishmael, which I don't think is necessarily the best book, but I think it's a really like valuable, important book with a great message.
By Daniel Quinn?
That's the one.
Yeah, and then there's The Story of Bee and My Ishmael are also part of that trilogy. I really like that too.
Yeah, The Story of Bee was, maybe even like more interesting to me as well. But
so too.
I would start with Ishmael just to get the feel. I also like Margaret Atwood a lot, and I like ethical books by Peter Singer. We're back to food. I'm reading right now his newest one, I think, called The Most Good You Can Do, the follow-up to The Life You Can Save.
Yeah, he's been focusing a lot on altruism lately.
Yeah, it's sort of like, I don't know, do you guys know Doug Stanhope, the comedian?
Yeah.
Doug is a guy whose comedy I love, and he's talked about, like, tons of, like, social issues over the course of his career. And on one of his recent albums, I think he says, or maybe I've seen him do it live, but I think both, where he's like, I don't know what to talk about anymore. Like, I've solved all the problems on my older albums. Like, I, like, yelled about overpopulation and, like, gay marriage and all the things. He's like, the answers are all there. People want to listen to him. So, like, what am I going to do now? And then he, then complains about other things. But so I feel like the same way for Peter Singer, like, until all the other, like, the issues of animal treatment or, euthanasia, life after death, life before, or birth before life, whatever. But I forget, there's a book he has called, I think, like, questions about, like, life and death and the things that become before and after them. It's definitely not called that, but it's about those things. And he's fully, addressed those topics. So, to keep being like, and also, guys, still keep up those things, like, those books exist. Check them out. And now, like, what are other ways that we can be living ethically, like, overall? And so I think it makes sense. I don't know if you were saying that it didn't make sense. I don't think you were. I think everything's fine.
No, Peter Singer has always been super influential to me. I mean, I read Animal Liberation when I was 13, 12,
Oh, wow.
13. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Did you become a vegetarian immediately, or?
That's when I switched from vegetarian to vegan, actually.
Oh, when did you become a vegetarian?
At 11.
Okay. Wow. 13-year-old vegan.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan, you were just a little bit older than that, huh?
Yeah, I was like 13, 14, I think,
Yeah,
when I was
yeah.
vegan as well.
Sweet.
Little vegans.
Yeah.
Sweet deal. Did you guys know each other then?
No.
No.
Nuh-uh.
Mm-mm.
You were just both alone.
Pretty much. I didn't even like when I went vegetarian, I didn't even know what the term vegetarian was.
You just didn't want to be eating animals.
Yeah, I just didn't want to eat animals anymore. Yeah.
Huh. Well, that makes sense. I mean, the word, the label, the names, those aren't the important things. The important things are the actions, the motivations, the consequences of actions.
So what brought you to veganism? Like what was your origin story?
In high school, I was like thinking about maybe if I didn't have to kill animals, it'd be better. You know, a thing that I think many people think, like all other things being equal, if you're not a sociopath, you're like killing animals like is less good than not killing them, not thinking about the results. But then the next thought that everybody has is like, but it is delicious. You know, I can't imagine it is the way it is. How can I make a change? Like, even if I did it, you know, you make the justifications. And so I kept doing that until college, when there was just in the dining hall, there was a place called The Granary that like it was a station where it was every day a different vegetarian option from around the world. And it was really cool. And I like would have them a lot just because they were good. And somewhere along the process, I was just like, well, I do think that I want, you know, I learned about maybe factory farming at some point. Maybe I at some point, I think I didn't come across Peter Singer until a little later, until I was a vegetarian. And I was like, maybe I also became vegan shortly after reading him for the first time. But basically just like deciding to give it a shot, to like try to do something, which is something that I advocate people do, like not just for dietary reasons or for ethical living, but just anything. Like if you're like, I think maybe I want to do this thing, or maybe this would be a good thing to do, but they're like, but what about all that? Forget about what about all that. Just try to do the thing. Like make steps towards taking, like make those efforts, because that's how things get done. And so I just did it. I was just like, yeah, I guess I'll try to live the way that I think I want to, which was mostly just, you know, not causing animal suffering unnecessarily if possible.
Was it like an instant transition for you at that point where you're like, I'm just going to do it, so you did it?
Yeah, the day that I decided, my buddies and I went out to like, I think like Chillaz or something. So like my first meal as a vegetarian, this happened. I was like, okay, guys, I'm a vegetarian now. And then I was like, what do you guys have that's vegetarian? Like, I see there's a vegetable soup, Southwest vegetable soup. Sounds great. And they were like, there's actually a meat broth. And I was like, doesn't matter. Close enough. I'll take it. And one friend was like, Myq, that's not, you don't want to do that, right? And I was like, yeah, you're right. And so I got a black bean burger. And and from that point on, I did not eat meat knowingly pretty much forever.
When was the last time you unknowingly ate meat?
I mean, I guess I wouldn't know. But there is a time that I actually, when I was a vegetarian, did choose to eat some meat because it was delivered to me by accident. And I took a bite out of a burrito, and it turned out to be a chicken burrito when I had ordered a vegetable burrito. And the delivery guy was gone. And like logistically, like there was nobody else around. It was like winter break or spring break or some break from school, and I was I was a resident assistant, and like just staying on campus. And so, in any other situation where there were people, I'd be like, "Hey, will you eat this? Would you be happy to eat this chicken thing?" I would have given it to somebody, but it was a choice between going in the garbage and me eating it. Because I couldn't return it, so I ate it because it seemed like the less wasteful thing to do.
Would you still do that today?
I might. I mean, the thing that I will say that I operate on sort of guidelines more than rules. You know, like when people are like, when you say you're vegan, whatever, which I also think that's a label that doesn't matter the most specifically to me. Like, I think it's good as like a jumping off point for a conversation. But when you like, there's a thing in Judaism that a good friend of mine is like, his mother's a rabbi, and he's also vegan. Zach Sherwin, do you know him?
Sure.
He's a vegan and comedian and rapper, and he's super, and everyone check out his stuff. His videos on YouTube are amazing. He writes and performs with the Epic Rap Battles of History series as well. And so his mother's a rabbi, and he tells me like some Jewish stuff that I don't know sometimes. Like there's a thing where you're supposed to keep kosher if you are being as Jewish as you are, required to be. But also you are supposed to not appear as though you are not keeping kosher. Like if you're at like an Asian vegan restaurant, like, and they have a fake shrimp dish, like they would say, don't eat that either. Like don't even eat fake shrimp or fake milk and meat, because the idea being that if somebody saw you doing that, they might then be like, oh, that they don't know the whole context. They're like, that Jew is a hypocrite now. And then that might make them form opinions about Jews that are untrue, even though it's based on a misunderstanding of what is true. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Is that only out in public, or is that in the home as well?
That is a great question. Certainly out in public, but I will ask Zach next time I talk to him.
That's crazy, because being raised like really strict LDS myself, they had the same ideology, like don't drink hot chocolate in a coffee mug. People might think it's coffee.
Oh yeah, and so here's the thing though. I think that the Jewish kosher version of it, to me, initially when I heard it, I was like, that doesn't make complete sense to me, because who cares what people think? Like the thing is important, not what people think. But then I started thinking about it as applying it to like veganism, and like I will tell the truth. I will, if I make a mistake or if I learn from a mistake, like I think that can be valuable. I do think that it is, I'll say, quote unquote, dangerous in the soundbite based society that we live in. Like, Peter Singer is a great example of a guy who I think is doing amazing things, writing amazing things, important things, valuable things, like correct things, reasonable things. But then also, because some of the stuff that he says gets taken out of context, they're like, oh, he's for killing babies.
Yeah.
I read one thing, and if you know the context of that, it's that, it's like, if a baby, was going to not have a brainstem, and they found out at 8 months, and it was only going to live a very short life of complete suffering, then it would be, many people would say, the kind and right thing to do in that situation to abort that fetus, or to that child, that baby, whatever it is at that point. Like the label doesn't matter. It's like that being will live in pain only. So like doing it a mercy, by ending its life is the right thing to do. And so then he says, also, if that baby was born prematurely, then it's the same suffering being outside the body. So he says, ethically, he's like, I understand why people think it's a different thing, but ending that baby's life once it's born at 8 months, versus being 8 months in the womb, he's like, there is no real ethical distinction that either could or should be made, is what he's saying. Where there are other distinctions that can be made, and people are like, he wants to kill babies, and so that is living in that society. And obviously he's motivated, and I'm motivated to hopefully live as well as I can and encourage other people to live as well as they can. Like, that what you do and say can be misconstrued. So, not to say that you're walking on eggshells or not eggshells all the time. I don't want to break any eggshells. There's, chickens in there, and they're going to hatch and live a full life. I would say, like, I do think about, I don't present things that are not true. I'm not trying to spin things, but even so, when people ask me, would you do that exact thing that you did again? I don't know. Because I don't want to say, oh yeah, there's definitely situations where I would eat meat. Because, that you could totally contrive a situation, like hypothesize and be like, would you eat meat in this situation? And the answer would probably be yes, but I don't think it's valuable to spend time thinking about speculating all the ways and times and situations that would be like that. I'm like, let's deal with what we have in front of us right now. Like, I would 100% eat, if they have, if we get to a future where there are no factory farms, there's only like stem cell based, like meat that was grown in a lab that never had a brain, that never had feelings, that never could feel pain. Like, I think that's a super great future to work towards. So yes, I would eat that meat. But then if somebody listens to this and they're like, he says he would eat meat, he's a hypocrite. Like that, is missing the point of like I want the most joy to exist in the world and the least suffering. And so if that means like living a certain way at one point and living a different way at another point, I'm open to that.
When it reminds me of a story when I was very young on my vegan path, my animal rights path. I was at the time he was the press officer for the Animal Liberation Front, and we went out to lunch one time, and it was a Chinese place, and they gave us what do they call them, fortune cookies, but they weren't vegan. And so, half the people at the table would crack them open and read their fortune and just leave them there. And it infuriated him so much that he actually ate them. We're like, you're like the most hardcore vegan. He's like, but it's fucking wasteful and it's disrespectful,
Oh, yeah. I go out with my mom to Asian places sometimes, and I don't want, like, especially if I'm not going to, if I see that it has egg in it or whatever, I won't want to open it. And she wants everyone to open the cookies. So we haven't like gotten into a real big hardcore argument about it, but yeah, I understand that thing. That makes sense. That guy's actions are reasonable to me. And I mean, I also say like, definitely when I say that like labels don't matter or like language or words or things, like, of course there is a sense in which they do, because they do have power over people, or power for people. Like another real quick Peter Singer example, just, do you know that like the concept of being brain dead, I read about in one of his books, like before that concept existed, like it meant that like the body is alive, the heart is pumping blood, but the person's consciousness is gone. Like for all everybody can tell, like it's just, being kept alive by machines, say, or whatever, it's like, there's no quality of life. There's no person there. But before they had the concept of brain death, people were uncomfortable, like, harvesting their organs or like turning the machine off. But once they were like, oh yeah, this guy's not dead, but he is brain dead. And they're like, oh, brain dead. Okay. And when you're brain dead, you can take their organs because for all intents and purposes, their consciousness is gone. And like, okay, we get it now. So it is valuable to think about ways that you do frame things because it can have an effect.
Totally. I was just thinking like,
I would eat that body is what I'm talking about.
Well, naturally, unless it was a vegetable.
Oh, I mean, it is, especially. That's why.
Right. So I was thinking, actually, it's also said the same with like wearing like faux fur or faux leather.
Of course.
Where, if you go out and you're wearing that, then it might look like you're actually wearing leather. I don't know.
Yeah, that's my favorite member of the cast of That 70s Show is Faux Fur Grace. But also, the thing that you said seriously that I'll respond to, yeah, of course, I think that I would not wear, I guess, it's really interesting because I can go back and forth. Like, if I am known, if I'm known as a vegan, like, if I become, say, like, recognizable enough, like, if there's a real famous vegan, like, say, Ellen DeGeneres, like wore a fake, a completely synthetic, like ethically sourced, leather seeming or faux fur or whatever, I think most reasonable people would be like, what? Ellen's doing that? I thought it must be. And then, be like, oh, who are you wearing? And be like, oh, it's a fake thing, and that could be cool to be like, oh, if I want to look cool and also be vegan, I can, or whatever. Mm-hmm. But also you sort of you always run the risk of people getting the wrong message, which, it's up to people to decide. Like whenever they have, the cycle of, I think through the last election cycle, somebody, some Republican went on, out in front of a convention, millions of people watching on TV, hearing him say like things that are like the next day in the paper, people are like, factually, all of these things that he said are wrong. He said so many incorrect things. And so now, but how many people read that on the next day? Thousands, like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, but not the millions that saw it. So like sometimes the impression that people get is all they get, and they don't get a chance to have like the greater conversation.
Definitely.
To change things up a little bit, I absolutely love listening to your podcast. And one of the things that I hear come up every once in a while is like your summer camp experiences and like the connections
sure.
that you've made in summer camps. And, you know, my daughter's getting about that age where I'm thinking about doing that, but I always, you know, I want to make sure she's going towards, you know, a progressive, vegan friendly kind of summer camp. And the only ones I can find are literally like halfway across the country because I live in fucking Utah, right?
Sure.
Like, do you really find those like experiences like worthwhile?
The summer camp that I went to, which is called Bucks Rock Creative and Performing Arts Camp, I think is the full title. I went there starting when I was 11. Every summer, I became a CIT, a counselor in training, a junior counselor. I eventually, you know, started getting paid to work there. I was a counselor into my mid-20s, because it was the most significant like place in my life. It was the most influential, especially like as a child.
Mm-hmm.
It was the most important thing in my development as a human being up until I was an adult, I would say. And like, I think, I mean, even now it's sort of like the same way. If you ask who's my favorite comedian, like I could name a dozen people and have more that I could name, because once you're like at the top, there's no comparing. There's no reason to say that this person's better than this person or funnier. And so the same way I've had like other amazing experiences, doing comedy, like is also a thing that has been life-changing for me, and music, and also certain friendships and relationships. And so I wouldn't want to, you know, it doesn't matter like which thing or person had the most influence. Like all of these things now are so valuable. But definitely at that time in my life, my parents were, we'd moved. So I had like new school to meet new kids that I wasn't really good at doing because I'd never done that. I was like pretty introverted and socially awkward when I started going there. And it was just a place that was so welcoming and so calm and such an amazing environment, and a good, and like fostering, you know, not only, I mean, for me, the social education was potentially even more valuable than like the artistic one, but they're both there and they're interlocked. Like you like learn, you know, you do whatever you want. Like this particular place, like it was the founder had studied with Maria Montessori, and the philosophy was, you know, children don't like to be taught. They do like to learn. So there's no schedule. You just go wherever you want and do whatever you want as long as you do something. And you could, you know, glass blow. You can go to the recording studio. You could be in a play. Like some of those things you need to schedule, because like if you had to do things with you couldn't be in a band and be like, hey, when band practice is whenever anybody wants to go anywhere. But for painting or for woodworking or ceramic making, like you could just show up. And so structurally, like the structure of that place is amazing. Like it's a beautiful place set up by really thoughtful people and run in just this, it was life-changing and mind-altering, and just I definitely, you know, it's not for everybody, and everybody doesn't need it, and maybe I would have turned out fine if I didn't go there, but I know for sure that I did turn out the way I am in large part because of that place.
So you're saying you would recommend?
Oh, no. Don't do it. It's mine. Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's why I, like, once I became, like, old enough to teach there and, like, be a counselor, I wanted to keep doing it. I mean, partially because I wanted to keep going to the magical place that I had experienced all those years, and then also because I wanted to help other people have that experience.
So you said it was a performing arts specific one?
Performing and creative arts. So there's like performing arts like theater, dance, music, clowning. Now I would do the clown shop was like there's improv comedy, sketch comedy, also some like, you know, sometimes they'll teach like unicycling, juggling, like classical clown, like circusy things. And then there wasn't stand-up comedy, but when I started doing stand-up, I was like, maybe I'll do some stand-up workshops. So they might still have that as well. And then for like the visual arts, they have things like, you know, painting, drawing, wood, metalworking, sculpture, sewing, batik, bargello, weaving, photography. I guess they used to have like a photo studio where you could actually go and develop film. I think now most of it's all digital. They have a culinary. Maybe just go to their website. Like I don't have to be there, but But I am their friend, certainly. Their bro, sure.
Do you know if that one is a vegan friendly camp?
Definitely. I mean, I was I became vegan, and I was still a counselor there, and I'm sure that since then, I'm sure they're able to contend with any dietary concerns that are necessary, pretty much. But definitely, when I was there, they always had every meal had a vegetarian option, if not definitely a vegan one, and there was always a salad bar for like. If some, like, I feel like everybody got one day off a week. So if like the chefs had a day off, like one meal would be bagels and then another meal would be pizza. And so for the pizza meal, you could always make they didn't have peanut butter eventually because of peanut allergies. But you could always have a soy nut butter and jelly sandwich, or like there was always hummus. There was always, salad vegetables. So yeah, it's 100% vegan friendly camp.
Now hopefully I can get my daughter to eat hummus.
She doesn't like hummus?
No, I can't figure it out.
It's because it's raw. Just kidding.
But hummus is... I don't even know if hummus is actually raw.
I don't know if it
there's
is either.
I think there is raw hummus, but hummus is not necessarily explicitly raw.
Probably the tahini or something is roasted, or I don't know.
But
Yeah.
I even tried. I was recommended to try making it with pure, like get the powdered kind to make it yourself, and do pure oil instead of water. Which it's delicious to do.
Okay.
It really milds the flavors down a little bit, but she's still like, ew, this is gross.
Does she like other forms of chickpea, like chickpeas or falafel?
Like one of her favorite meals is chana masala.
Huh. Does she know that it's the same thing?
Yes. I think she's just as stubborn like as I am, so she's just, sticking to her guns.
People will do that. This is sort of also related to the idea of labels and the belief that that goes behind them. In college, I had a friend who said she hated cream cheese, and then like one day I saw her eating like a carrot cake that definitely had a cream cheese frosting, and she was like, "This carrot cake is good," and I was like, "Looks like you like some cream cheese," and she was like, "Oh, this is cream cheese." I was like, "Yeah, the frosting." And then she pushes it away and says, "Then I guess I don't like it."
Yeah.
Rather than assuming like I don't like the taste of coffee for the most part, but I understand that if you put a lot of sugar in coffee, it doesn't taste like the bad version that I don't like. Like when I went to Rome once with a girlfriend who was like, "You have to, when we get there, stay awake the whole day because that's how, otherwise, you'll be on the wrong schedule." And so she's like, "You have to like drink something." Like, so we just got coffee and like poured, and it tasted like coffee ice cream, which I do like. Like, obviously I grew up eating coffee ice cream, and now I enjoy vegan versions of coffee ice cream when possible because the sugar completely outweighs the negative part of coffee. So if you could just make a hummus that's chana masala flavored, go for it.
I could
Large
probably try
chunks.
it, actually.
Or just add sugar to it.
Just add sugar to it.
That might
Yeah,
work.
I think that's the message. And add carrot cake.
And add carrot cake. Well, carrot cake is my favorite cake. So
It's great. I think that my girlfriend is vegan, but I don't think she loves carrot cake. Like, so we frequently, and I like if I get dessert, I like to share it, because I think the last time, have you guys ever been to New York City vegan restaurants?
Yeah.
I haven't in a while, but and I know it changes so frequently. So it's been like 8 years for me.
Did you know Candle 79?
I never went. No.
That's a place that that's the place that I was where I established my new guideline of never eat a dessert alone because it was so good, but I felt so bad. Just like I ate too much food. And I'm like, dessert needs to, like, I always feel, good about going to a restaurant and, being like, okay, it's vegan, it's vegetables, it's healthy. But then like, I can't make that leap for dessert. I'm like, even the dessert, it's carrot cake. It's a cake made of carrots. Everything's fine. But so I like carrot cake is like a rarer treat for me now, but I'm always happy to have it.
I love making it, but it's a pain in the ass to make.
I've never made it. Do you know that you can buy it from other people? They'll make it.
It's easier that way.
Yeah, but they usually have walnuts in it, and that's what I can't do.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Sorry, you have. Here's actually. I was about to say like picky tastes, but I I was with some buddies the other day who are none of whom vegan, but like a friend was like grilling some stuff for us. And so he grilled me some vegetables. And then he asked me, do you want, like, what would you like on the vegetables? Like, how should I season them? Should I use olive oil? Like, what should I, do to make them not just vegetables that are just vegetables? And I was like, it kind of doesn't matter to me. Like, I'm happy that you're making me food, number one. So I'm like, I'm not picky, And then a friend was like, you're vegan. You're definitely picky. And I was like, I think there's a connotation to pickiness that doesn't line up for me, Like, of course, everybody makes choices about what they will and won't do or eat. But I'm not like, picky seems more like, I choose, this bother. Does that resonate with you, or
Definitely.
am I being picky about the language?
No, I think it does. It's something that's always bothered me because people would say that I was picky, but like I think because I was vegan, I ended up trying more things that I would have tried in my life.
That is a thing that I 100% also like when people ask me like, don't you feel bad about like having given up like so many things? I'm like, before I was vegetarian, like I only ate like the most limited number of things, like pasta and pizza and peanut butter and jelly, and only things that started with P. And like when I became a vegetarian, I was like, oh man, I can eat Indian food and Cambodian and Mexican and Thai and like all these other like and vegetable sushi. Like, I just hadn't had those things, so like I totally ate more things after, which isn't the case for everybody. I understand that. But even so, even if I was eating all the things, there's still so many things to eat.
Mm-hmm. So just to throw it a little bit, like when you became vegetarian vegan, was that like part of a larger path of like social progression, or like a starting of a path or somewhere along that progression for you?
I guess if I understand your question correctly, like I feel like I have been on a path of social progression, but I don't know if they're like, I feel like it's not necessarily, this was the first step, and now what's the next step? It's everything sort of happening on a, like a zone defense, like not just person to person or whatever. I don't know if that's a good sports analogy, but like it wasn't just, what's the other analogy that won't be perfect? I was talking to a trans friend about like the gender binary and how, there are people today who still are like, it's man and woman. Those are the only two things. There's no in between. There's no outside of that. There is a gender binary, and it's not a spectrum. And now I hear there are also people who are like, yeah, it's not a spectrum, but the other way. It's like, it's a nebula. Like, it's obviously not just one point leading to another point, and you're definitely somewhere along that line. It's that, there's a multitude of ideas of identities, of representations, of labels and choices. And so similarly here, there are so many ways to be potentially socially progressive for what that means. But like, yeah, I mean, I'd say being, vegan or eating the way that I do was sort of like the main big starting one. And then like reading Peter Singer, you come across all the other ones and so, I mean, obviously things like altruism is a thing that I'm like reading about and, have made changes in my life sort of because of that. So in a way, I guess like that, like being associated with, the readings of Peter Singer has helped me along the different various paths. But yeah, also I guess I have, I have other friends in my life who care about other things. I'm pretty, like, I'm not the most politically active, like I try to keep informed and, vote for people and things that represent the things and that I care about. But there are people who like know so much more than me that like when I know a smart, good person who cares about the stuff that I do, who also like does a lot more research than I do, then I'll be like, let me outsource that to you. And like, obviously I'm not going to just blindly take everything they tell me. I will, filter it through my own, does this, is this what I like? Is this what I want? Does this make sense? Is this reasonable? But I think that that's a helpful thing, especially in this day and age where there's the benefit of it. There's so much information out there possible, and different people care about different things to different extents, So like just yesterday, I was walking with a guy, a comedian in Montreal, who was like, we got food at Burritoville, and he asked them, he's like, we were getting it to go because we were in a hurry, and he's like, the containers aren't styrofoam, right? And they're like, oh no, they are biodegradable. And he was like, great. And I was like, that's not a question that I ask all the time. Like, if I have to get food to go, if it's styrofoam, then sometimes it's styrofoam, you know? Mm-hmm. Or like, if I've definitely been in places where they're like, we don't recycle bottles. And like, I just don't have any options because I'm, you know, away from home. I'm in another town. Like, I have a rental car. Like, the bottle, I guess I could bring the bottle back on the plane with me and then recycle it when I get home. But that sometimes seems above and beyond, and I don't always make that choice. Sometimes I throw a bottle away in Idaho.
I would say I would always throw a bottle away in Idaho.
But so, yeah, I think that I definitely try to, I think about other, all the causes that there's, you can't think about everything all the time. But definitely I've been a person who has been, aging, wisening, hopefully, growing, changing, and being aware of everything as much as possible, as people make them clear. Yeah.
You brought up like your trans friend, and being a linguist, how do you feel about like the proper like the use of pronouns in the English language that are gender neutral?
I believe that like everyone, I'm a fan of everyone deciding what they call themselves. Like, I'm not going to tell somebody you're not that. Like, if I think that it, especially because it doesn't matter, it has no effect on me. Like, a thing that doesn't affect me and strongly affects you, why not, err on the side of you get to decide who you are, what you call yourself, how you refer. Like, I like a very new thing that I saw like a few weeks ago is that I think the Oxford English Dictionary now has MX in it. Do you know that?
No, I didn't know that one.
That one.
It is like, instead of Mr. or Mrs. or Ms. or any kind of greeting, that or whatever that's called, MX. It's like it could be for anyone, for anywhere along the gender spectrum or nebula. It could be for people who don't want you to know, like, because why not? Why not just have one that's gender neutral or gender any? Mm-hmm. So it's pronounced either mix or mux or mixter, which I also like a lot because it sort of sounds like mixture and sounds like trickster. And when I saw that, I talked to my trans friend about it because they're also younger than I am. They go by they, which I also like. I sort of like using they in general because it's easier than like it's the clunky his or her, and now especially his or her or non his or her. And there was a guy who had a joke a long time ago. He went to Brown University, and I don't remember his name, but I really liked this joke at the time. And I still think it's a funny joke, but now it has like a different context. His joke was like, he's like, it's so difficult to have to say things like his or her. Like, I wish there was just one word for it, like his. And at the time it was like super funny. I mean, I think it still is funny if, like, for the right reason, because the point of the joke isn't sexism is good. Mm-hmm. It's that these things are important to think about. Or at least that's what I'm taking from it. And that's like the filter that I'm using on it now. But, I definitely I think I can, when I talk to my young trans friend, I definitely sometimes feel like older people must feel like at any point when things are changing and they're like, what? Oh, this is a thing now? Okay. And I understand why some people are like, I'm not going to do that or learn that, or like this is just what I've always said and thought. But I hope that, I mean, we live in a really interesting time because, more before, like, say for tens of thousands of years of human existence, like, life didn't change as much as it changes in one generation now. Like, back in my day, it was the same. That was like how it was thousands of years ago. But now, like, technology with, obviously the Industrial Revolution, and then this century with, my grandmother didn't have TV. Like, there was, you could see all the movies when she was alive. And now there's just so much world, so much information, so much communication, so much content, and it's all connected so much that, of course, things are like, people are learning about so many things, and there are things that are changing more quickly, objectively. And so people's subjective experience is also affected. So yeah, I guess maybe it's as a linguist, but definitely as a human, like I'm a fan of, if you're not hurting anybody, do whatever you want, say whatever you want, be whatever you want. I will also, I guess, present this counterpoint slightly that a lesbian friend of mine offered at one point, because I heard there's a woman who like wrote a thing, and I don't know I think it's this woman that she wrote a book, I think it's called Bad Dyke, where she is a lesbian identified woman who is married to a man, but the point of the story and her identification is that she's been only attracted to women, like, sexually, physically, emotionally, romantically, everyone across in life, the only people she's ever been attracted to are women, except for this one man. So she's like, does that one person make me not a lesbian? Like the prevailing evidence is that I'm a lesbian, and just like there's this one, there's like hetero identified guys who every once in a while are like, oh man, that guy like does it for me, And some might say like, oh, then isn't the word like bi or pan or some other or some kind? I mean, queer is a nice catch-all. Like, I think it's, with the ongoing things today of like, what bathrooms should trans people use? Like, wouldn't it be just good to have like, hey, why doesn't everyone just have like a bathroom? Like one non-gender specific bathroom, and you just use it, and that's fine. And like, queer is a good term. Like, I love the term just in general. But and for me, like, I'm not a huge labeler. Like, I'm like, I honestly don't really care what people call me. Like, when I talk about like being in an open relationship, sometimes people are like, oh, you're poly. I'm like, technically, I don't think what I'm doing, but it doesn't matter. Like, sure. Oh, you're a swinger. Like, I mean, no, not based on what swinger means, but however you want to conceptualize, like, or if people are like, you're a Jew, right? I'm like, I don't really care or believe in it, but arguing that you aren't Jewish is like one of the most Jewish things that you can do. So, like, I feel like for me personally, like, I am fortunate. Like, regardless of how I identify, like, I present as a, straight, cisgender, white, American, male, Jew, like almost all perfectly privileged. And so I know that my experience is not universal. Like, I haven't had, I've had my ups and downs, my difficulties in life. But there are people who have experienced so much that I would not deign to, claim that I know like how they should be behaving. So that's why, yeah, overall, I guess the point that I wanted to get to was my friend, my lesbian friend says she doesn't like that this person calls herself a lesbian and is with a guy, because that might now embolden guys who are like, oh, a lesbian can be with a guy? I'm going to hit on more lesbians now. And she's like, that will practically affect my own life and experience if enough, if more people do that. So she's like, hey, like, there is some value to, if there are labels, using them consistently. But also, anybody can say whatever, especially about themselves. You can say whatever you want. Like, she can say, I'm a lesbian who's married to a man, and everybody else can say whatever they want or believe whatever they want about it. And, if I was her friend, maybe I would have this conversation with her. But in general, it doesn't affect me. So anything that doesn't affect me or anybody on like a large scale, I think the question of that my lesbian friend brings up is an interesting one. So I think it's all valuable to talk about.
I'm really excited about the term MX, because that's actually something my daughter was asking me about a couple weeks ago. It reminds me of XE to replace he and she, the Z, but it never really caught on, unfortunately.
Or yo
Sure.
was another one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way that language works is like not you can't always just make it. You can't always like the way you can't always get a video to go viral. You can't get a word to be the word. Like, you can't make it. It has to happen naturally to some degree,
But I'll
like,
keep trying.
Oh yeah, you can definitely try 100%. And like the way that there's so many words historically that, have these horrific, entries into the language that, like, if we didn't have the internet now, we would never even know about, like, I just learned about, I guess the word tawdry, like, used to mean something nice, and it was about like Saint Audrey. But now because whatever it was, like her lace went out of style. And so they started calling it tawdry, and now it has a negative connotation. And now this Saint Audrey is now forever, like at least historically, linked to what tawdriness. But also she's dead, and it doesn't bother me.
That should be. So anyway, I was gonna touch on your comedy a little bit. Do you think that a part of the being in the children's camp led to that, the summers camp, or do you think that it helped with like some of your first performances and stuff like that?
Well, I was playing the violin since I was 4, so that wasn't my choice. My parents were both music teachers. My mom music was very important to her, so I was sort of given the choice to be like, do you want to play the violin? And I was a kid, and so I was just like, yeah, kids are like improvisers, yes, and then I was like, once I was doing it, I was like, no, can I stop? And she's like, nope, sorry, you're doing it. And I really didn't like it, and then when I went to the camp, I was like part of the deal. Like you're away. She's like, you're away for the summer. It's important for you to keep up your violin. So you can do anything they want, but you also have to do the orchestra. Like you have to do some music thing once a day. And so I did. And eventually the camp directly affected my path because a friend of mine, a guy named Ari, he played the guitar, and he had a guitar, and he was visiting me one day. And like in high school, I was just like, while he was in the bathroom, I was just like playing around with his guitar because it was fun. Like going back to the same thing, children don't like to be taught. Like same thing with people. People don't like to be taught, like told things, but they do like to discover things, learn things. Like, it's about the agency. And I mean, ultimately, we all don't have any control over anything, but it was fun I didn't have to play the guitar. I was just messing around with it. And so I got my own guitar and then just started teaching myself, and it was super fun. And I did do some of my first, I'd done some violin recitals that, probably helped me, not be nervous. Like I was probably nervous at some of them, but eventually it was just the thing that I did. You play a solo piece in front of people, or you're in an orchestra or whatever. But then at the camp, there were like coffee house nights or talent shows or whatever, where I would just play for a group of friends, like songs that I started writing. And that is how I got into comedy. It was like, I loved playing these songs. And when I was in college, I joined like a chamber choir and an a cappella group. But eventually I was just like, I want to focus on my solo singer-songwriter music performing career. And I went out around Boston looking for places to perform, and one of the places that I found was a comedy club that let me come and play funny songs. And so that's how I got into comedy.
So what were some of those like first performances like?
Of music, or like of getting into comedy? Because they're sort of overlap, just that the first several times that I performed at a comedy club, I was trying to be a musician. So like I would play a funny song, I would talk a little bit, and then I would play another funny song. And like the talking was like a lot of fun. Like sometimes I would just make people laugh. Like the very first time I performed at a comedy club, I went on after Jonathan Katz. Do you know him?
No.
He did Dr. Katz, Professional Therapist, a cartoon on Comedy Central years ago.
Yeah.
So he was the Jonathan Katz of that show. And he was like a famous person that I knew, and I was going on after him. So I remember before I played my first song, and he closed with a musical bit. So I was like, oh man, it's my first time, and I'm going on after the most famous person who did the same thing that I'm about to do. and people, like, that was like endearing to people, I guess. Like, that was a funny thing to say. It was like self-deprecating, but it was coming from a real place. Like I was kind of worried about it, but then I did my songs and I enjoyed doing them. And then I just enjoyed like what I would call now riffing in the middle, because I didn't have any prepared things to say, but at that point I called it talking until they stopped laughing and then playing another song. And so that's what I did for a little while. Like over the course of the next like couple of years, I was pursuing music kind of. I was in grad school, and I was like, I wanted to give myself time to, quote unquote, make it. I'm like, okay, just keep being in school and just keep pursuing this. And then at some point I realized that I really liked telling the jokes, and I would like writing jokes to tell. And then I sort of shifted to like look for more places to perform that weren't music venues, that were like other comedy open mic nights. And I just started going to them, and I would still bring the guitar initially. Like I would do, if I had 5 minutes, I'd tell 4 minutes of horrible jokes, and then 1 minute of a song that worked, and be like, good night, thank you. Like people clap when you're done with a song. And that's the way I started.
Did you ever have that moment where you're just like, I either have to be 100% on board with this, or I have to do something else?
In college, when I was in this a cappella group and in this chamber choir, and also wanting to pursue music at the time, and also wanting to maybe, I had been sort of had the idea planted by my dad, like to have a backup plan, like what if the creative life doesn't work out? So I was also maybe thinking about being a teacher and getting a math major, and also I was getting a psych major, maybe applying to be a therapist, or to go to like grad school for counseling, maybe apply to Teach for America, like which I did apply to, not that I did, but so all those things were happening. And I did feel like I was pulled in a lot of directions, like in school, pursuing all those things. And I felt like, I was giving 20% to each of 5 different paths. And I was like, that was why I did quit my a cappella group even though I loved it, I sort of minimalized and focused on the thing that was the most important to me at the time, which was I gotta go out. I just turned 21. I'm like, I can get into all the bars now where I can perform. So now I'm gonna go try to do that. I don't know if that answers your question, but it certainly answers a question.
What do you ever give advice to kids that are trying to decide on a path to go on and how to do that?
The advice is just to do what you want to do. And kind of hope for the best, plan for the worst. Eugene is a real funny comedian who I think I saw a graduation speech that he did. And in that speech, he said, try to do what you want to do for 10 years. If you want to do comedy, or if you want to do music, if you want to, knit, if you want whatever you want, obviously you might not be making money from it initially, because you're not going to be the best at it initially. But if you really care about it and you think you can be good at it, then you got to give yourself the time to do it. So he said 10 years. So I'll second that. I definitely, when I was doing comedy and working, I was working at a cafe, at a bookstore while I was in grad school. And I was I know I'm not making my living from comedy right now. I want to, but if I have to, I thought about maybe I'll never do it. Maybe it'll never happen, but I do want to try. There was a comedian in Boston named Tony V, who was amazing. And he did a show called The Failure Artist. And he talked about how he, at that point in his career, he was living as a professional comedian. He was working as a professional comedian. And he's one of the funniest guys I've ever seen. And he said, I've taken every meeting there is to take in Hollywood. And the consensus is I'm very nice to meet. He'd been on Conan once. He'd had a few bit parts in movies, but he didn't have, he didn't have a sitcom. And he said, I'm glad I'm a failure. Technically, I'm a failure. But that's better than, failing is better than not trying. Because if you don't try, you'll never know if you're going to, if you don't succeed, some people are well, if I don't try, then I can always say I would have succeeded if I did try. But that's the worst. What if you would have succeeded and you don't try? Trying is the important thing. Doing, as Yoda would say. My new Yoda thing, instead of do or do not, there is no try. It's just do. How about do?
Just do it.
There is no do not. There is no try. There's only do. And then a version I came up with today is true or true not. There is no die. I don't know if that one will work for anything, but the advice is people my dad was pleasantly surprised when he realized that I was making my living from comedy. He was I thought there was only, so many people, your parents, whoever, society, authorities will be there's a way to do it. There's, you have to, grow up, get married to one person, a man and a woman, have a child, have another child, have a job, have it forever. So many things about that are not the way things are anymore for everybody. If you want those things, do those things. But if you don't want those things, figure out what you want. People ask me sometimes about my comedy, and they're how do you make a joke? How do you figure out who you are on stage? And there's this old, a thing about a sculptor, and they're how do you make a sculpture of an elephant? He's you take a block of wood or metal or, marble, let's say marble. I'm not a sculptor. You take the block of whatever it is and you just chip away everything that doesn't look like an elephant. And so for comedy, or for who you are as a person, I feel I'm constantly chipping away. I'm both the sculptor and the sculpture, chipping away things that aren't me, finding the things that are me, finding the shape of me that I am and that I want to be. And you can add things onto it. You don't have to just chip things away. You can edit things. You don't have to think about it like a sculpture. You can think and conceive and do and be like whatever you want. And so why not? Like, why not try those things? And like, if you're like, well, how will I make enough money? Maybe you won't. Maybe you wouldn't make enough money being a lawyer. You know, maybe all the jobs are going to go away. Like people on Wall Street lost their jobs.
I'm sure that there's a lot of weird things and strange things that happen in the comedy circuit and comedy scene in general. Like, what's some of the strangest things, the weirdest things that you've seen while touring?
I mean, do you mean like while performing or like just on the road in a town?
A little of both.
I mean, I guess I don't know. Like sometimes people ask for like the worst shows that I've had, and I remember one where I was opening for Casey and the Sunshine Band, and I was on a rotating stage outside under a tent for like 1,500 people, and they were not happy to see me because they didn't know that I would be there, and the band, they wanted the band to come out, but they weren't coming out for another half hour or an hour. and a little girl booed me, or no, the little girl, other people probably booed. A little girl, like, it's a good question, but I don't know. The concept of weirdness, like, is maybe lost on me now. You know, like, I know that I, quote unquote, am weird, but also, like, I've been asking audiences lately, like, who doesn't think they're weird, you know? Like, and it'll be a small minority of the crowd. Like, the first time I asked it, one guy clapped. I was like, one person isn't weird? That's weird.
How can people get in contact with you, follow your work, and you know, see your live shows?
If you look at my name online, Myq Kaplan, Myq is spelled MYQ. If you enjoy that, great. If you don't, that's also fine. I get it. MyqKaplan.com is my website. Myq Kaplan at, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Vine, and on iTunes where I have some albums. On YouTube, there's some videos. I have a podcast of my own called Hang Out With Me. That's on the Keith and the Girl Network. My special on Netflix is called Small, Dork, and Handsome. And now I have stopped talking.
This week you heard
Journey's End by Blackmill.
Right now you're listening to
Konkret by Chillaz.
To everyone who has rated and reviewed us on iTunes, super high fives. If you've given us a ghost review, double high fives.
Like, if I had a vegan potluck, you would be invited. And anyone who didn't review would not be invited, because that's the kind of person I am.
Total sidebar here, but have you ever noticed that, like, most vegan potlucks has turned into dessert bars?
Yeah. Which is fine.
Which is not complaining.
Dessert bars and people who bring bags of chips.
It's totally true. So if you want to, don't be one of those people that show up to a vegan potluck and don't bring anything, rate and review the show.
And if you've already done that and you don't want to be one of those people that show up with just a bag of chips, you can also get your friend's phone, get your partner's phone, get your mom's phone, and ghost review. Go subscribe. Hashtag ghost review.
It helps out the show more than I can tell you. So please rate and review the show. We also have social media.
If you're not friends with us or you haven't liked us, that's rude, and you should do it, because we often say things on there that we don't say on the show. So be our friend. Like us. That's it. Fuck shit damn. WhичSidePodcast.com. Click on the social tab.
Which Side Podcast is hosted and produced by Jordan Halliday and Jeremy Parkin of the Which Side Media Collective, with web design by Jordan Halliday and sound design by Jeremy Parkin. Booking by Mari Halliday. Theme music by Commandantes. Go to whichsidecollective.org to check out the other shows in the collective. As always, fuck shit damn.